Hi, I'm Luke Bean. I'm reading from Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. When Colonel Cathcart learned that Dr. Nika too had been killed in McWatt's plane, he increased the number of missions to 70. The first person in the squadron to find out that Dr. Nika was dead was Sergeant Towser, who had been informed earlier by the man in the control tower that Dr. Nika's name was down as a passenger on the pilot's manifest McWatt had filed before taking off. Sergeant Towser brushed away a tear and struck Dr. Nika's name from the roster of squadron personnel. With lips still quivering, he rose and trudged outside reluctantly to break the bad news to Gus and Wes, discreetly avoiding any conversation with Dr. Nika himself as he moved by the flight surgeon's slight, sepulchral figure, roosting despondently on his stool in the late afternoon sunlight between the orderly room and the medical tent. Sergeant Towser's heart was heavy. Now he had two dead men on his hands, Mudd, the dead man in Yossarian's tent who wasn't even there, and Dr. Nika, the new dead man in the squadron, who most certainly was there, and gave every indication of proving a still thornier administrative problem for him. Gus and West listened to Sergeant Towser with looks of stoic surprise, and said not a word about their bereavement to anyone else until Dr. Nika himself came in about an hour afterward to have his temperature taken for the third time that day, and his blood pressure checked. The thermometer registered half a degree lower than his usual subnormal temperature of 96.8. Dr. Nika was alarmed. The fixed, vacant, wooden stares of his two enlisted men were even more irritating than always. "God damn it," he expostulated politely in an uncommon excess of exasperation. "What's the matter with you two men anyway? It just isn't right for a person to have a low temperature all the time and walk around with a stuffed nose." Dr. Nika emitted a glum, self-pitying sniff and strolled disconsolately across the tent to help himself to some aspirin and sulfur pills and paint his own throat with argoil. His downcast face was fragile and forlorn as a swallow's, and he rubbed the back of his arms rhythmically. "Just look how cold I am right now. You're sure you're not holding anything back?" You're dead, sir," one of his two enlisted men explained. Dr. Nika jerked his head up quickly with resentful distrust. "What's that?" "You're dead, sir," repeated the other. "That's probably the reason you always feel so cold." "That's right, sir. You've probably been dead all this time, and we just didn't detect it." "What the hell are you both talking about?" Dr. Nika cried shrilly, with a surging, petrifying sensation of some onrushing, unavoidable disaster. "It's true, sir," said one of the enlisted men. "The records show that you went up in McWatt's plane to collect some flight time. You didn't come down in a parachute, so you must have been killed in the crash." "That's right, sir," said the other. "You ought to be glad you've got any temperature at all." Dr. Nika's mind was reeling in confusion. "Have you both gone crazy?" he demanded. "I'm going to report this whole insubordinate incident to Sergeant Towser." "Sergeant Towser's the one who told us about it," said either Gus or Wes. "The War Department's even going to notify your wife." Dr. Nika yelped and ran out of the medical tent to remonstrate with Sergeant Towser, who edged away with him with repugnance and advised Dr. Nika to remain out of sight as much as possible until some decision could be reached relating to the disposition of his remains. "Gee, I guess he really is dead," grieved one of his enlisted men in a low, respectful voice. "I'm gonna miss him. He was a pretty wonderful guy, wasn't he?" "Yeah, he sure was," mourned the other. "But I'm glad the little fuck is gone. I was getting sick and tired of taking his blood pressure all the time." I read banned books.